go ahead and get started. All right, so how many people, besides, Tristan here and myself, have started to work with the new App Inventor 2? No. It is now actually it is in beta stage. If you look at the label of App Inventor 2.0, it is no longer in alpha. You can see right here it is now in beta stage, which means they're moving forward and basically pushing this out to the general, a more general public, and let people use it. Unfortunately, yes.
When we use App Inventor 1, the file name says beta.
That may be the case.
Yeah, it's just
Isn't that right?
Still
It
in
says
beta.
beta.
It was originally in
So
beta
are we
since we
back
started class.
using 2 already in beta?
Yep.
Okay.
So I would, I personally would transition to beta, just because 1 is actively being developed, and 2 is actively being, debugged. I don't think any work is being done to App Inventor 1 anymore. So that means, it's stable in a way because nothing is being done to App Inventor 1. But it also means that existing bugs won't be fixed, existing features won't be extended. But App Inventor 2 is still actually getting constantly upgraded. There are new features and things that as you discovered, things that used to work well now is sometimes kind of like doesn't seem to work that well. But that's the whole process of developing software, especially for a software development platform that is graphical based, and it's really not that easy to come up with software like this. But anyway, I want to show you this screen. I showed you guys last week already, and I said, well, whoever wants to play with it, Thursday is the first day when they switch over to the new project. My own personal projects have not been affected at all with this change. Okay, there are nothing broken with my project. I verified that 2 bugs that I reported, both of those are now fixed. So I'll show you guys what I mean by that. The setup here, I have not used either one of these setup. I have only used the Dropbox setup, which means I'm downloading the APK and then use Dropbox to upload it. In class here, or if you do not have an actual Android device, I suggest that you use the SDK, the software development kit from Android, and start up your own virtual machine, and then you can just upload and install the APK file, just basically the way that I have always been doing it in class. So those methods always work, okay, regardless of which version of App Inventor you're using. So I'm going to click continue here because Linux and Windows support is still lacking if you want to run the emulator directly from inside App Inventor 2. Okay. You can see that the menus are now slightly different. They actually put menus up here. Instead of a single button that brings you to the project screen, you can now click on project, and you can directly from here do any one of these items. Or if you click my projects, then you switch back to the original project screen. If you select a particular project, let's say this one here, you can also now use the import or export feature to download a particular project. So the way of doing things is a little bit different because they move the items around a little bit. I think it's cleaner this way. Okay. If you select a particular project, if you go into the project itself, you can see that there's no download, or there are no buttons here to let you download or connect your App Inventor to a particular device, because that is now moved to a different menu, which is Connect. So they move things around a little bit. What used to be on the button bar is now on the menu bar and becomes menu items. Or if you want to build the project, which was called something else before, I think it was called download. It was the button itself was labeled download. Now it's called build, and you have 2 ways to do it. I tried the QR code method and it didn't work with my cell phone. I have not diagnosed the problem. But the second approach, definitely works, the same way as before. saved to my computer, so it will download an APK file, and then I can use the APK file to upload to the virtual machine and test it. So without any further delay, what we'll do is we'll take a look at the first test program that I wrote to check whether it fixed one of the problems that I reported and found a way to get around, which has to do with replacing a list item. Okay, so right here I have a simple test program. The other thing that they still have not basically enhanced is the lack of a zoom button, like with App Inventor 1. App Inventor 1 has a zoom button, which is really, really handy, but in App Inventor 2, for whatever reason, I think it might have to do with,
You can actually sort of emulate that by zooming in on the web,
on the browser
web page,
itself.
the page itself.
Oh, that didn't work before. Has it always worked?
I haven't noticed. I haven't tried it.
I think
yes, it did work before.
It did work before? Okay.
But yeah, you sort of can get around that.
Sort of. I still missed a way to kind of have a little key so it lists all the items, so you can just click one and it brings you to that particular item. So anyway, I created this little program to test this one feature. The one feature that I'm testing is this block here, replacing a single item within a list. It did not work before. Okay, before it would not do a single thing to the list, even though I I take it back. Before it would actually give me a runtime error. Okay, when it runs, it would give me a runtime error. But now it is fixed. So the way it was tested was using a global variable called LP test, or list pair test. Originally I was using a list pair, that's why it was named LP test. Another global variable to indicate a key, which is not used anymore because I simplified the test procedure. In the screen initialization, I just put a single item into the list, and then I display the content of that particular list item. For button 1, I use text box 1 to replace that particular item in LP test, and then I display the content of that item in the list. So this way, I can check whether the list item is actually getting updated or not. This feature was not, or replace list item as a block did not work before. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what we do to get a program to run in an emulator. So we just go to build and click app save to my computer. This will download an APK file that I can upload to the emulator once it's downloaded to the computer. If you're doing this on an actual Android device, you can also use the USB connection to upload using ADB, or you can just use Dropbox. I use Dropbox to do all of this stuff here because it's just flexible. I don't need a USB cable for that. I should probably prepare this guy to run in. Just checking to see whether I can see my emulator. It is definitely there. Install -R, and then I have my. I guess I didn't download it to that folder.
It was C10.
It was?
I did remember C10.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
There it is, top. Under Android user. Change list item. APK.
Created a folder. Oh, there's a space in front of it, that's why. when I specify the file name, I accidentally press the space bar first. The code still work. It's just a little bit tricky to find it and type the file name. Okay, so there we go. We switch back to the emulator, get it unlocked, and my app is right here. You can see that it's the initialization value was from the initialization event, and if I change it to something else like var1, then it changes to var1. If I change it to something else like var2, oh nice, and then it changes to var2, so that call is now verified to be working again as of the beta, the new version of App Inventor 2. I wish they number the App Inventor 2 like App Inventor 2.1, 2.2, or many times before it's released, they would number it as 1.99, because it's close to being released. It's close to 2, but not quite there.
I think they still do give it a number, but just not stamped on
It's
the
not
page.
reflected up there. Yep. They probably have a build number, but not an actual number.
Yeah, under help.
Yep. So this feature is now verified to be working. I wrote all of these projects before class. The other one was closed screen. Okay, closed screen did not work before. So I'm going to show you the app itself, and then we'll take a look at the behavior of this program. This is screen 1. Screen 1 is always the first screen when you start up an app. It has a single button to trigger switching to screen 2. So we'll take a look at the blocks of screen 1, and this is the actual code of screen 1. When button 1 is clicked, it will open up the other screen with a start value of yo, okay? And then when it comes back, it will intercept the event just like before. Oh, this is also another change. The parameters now become draggable, which is really nice. If you want to use, let's say the result, you can just drag it into place, which I find, to be quite useful. It's just that you can save a lot of, typing or, going to variables and then drag, get variable from over there. Yep.
Oh, and in order to type text now, just put a quote in front of your text.
A single or double?
Double quote.
Double quote?
Double
Okay.
quote and type, and it'll insert it right there. Typing text does nothing.
Okay. Typing text, actually brings a context-sensitive thing, which is different from before. Kind of annoying. But I can show you guys about that one too. So this is basically just testing whether the closed screen action from the other screen will trigger this particular event in the original screen at the right time, because it did not. Before, we got the other screen closed event as soon as screen 2 is opened, okay, which is definitely the wrong order, because I would not be able to catch the result of screen 2 when it wants to pass the result back. But now it is working, because let me switch to screen 2 and show you the code in screen 2. Screen 2 is really simple. All screen 2 is going to do is to reflect what screen 1 has sent it, so that it can display it on the screen and say, okay, I got this from the original screen. When the back button is pressed when I have screen 2 being active, it will just close the screen and pass a result of right back at you, to the first screen. So this way I can test, whether the value is sent to the screen that I'm creating, and also whether the quote-unquote return value, the result, is sent back to the original screen. And both ways are important if you want to use features like that. So let's go ahead and build it again, and we'll test this out and see whether it works. I already know that it works, but I just want to show you guys, that it does work. That's pretty fast. This time the progress bar, just completed in a fraction of a second.
It's still gonna make you wait.
There we go. So we just save it without a space bar in front of the name. And then we'll upload it and install it. /adb install -r close screen. And it's switch back to the emulator. Go back to home, and we have our close screen app here. And that's all it does is to click text for button 1, and then it says screen 1 says yo, and then if I press the back button, it goes back to the first screen, but the first screen will display screen 2 says right back at you, and so it's working the way it's supposed to. So some of the bugs that I know of, in version 2, the alpha version of App Inventor 2 are definitely fixed currently. Now the other issue that you reported has to do with the screen resolution fix somehow is causing issues at this point. So what we'll do is we'll give it a try and see if we can fix that problem.
Maybe they changed the XML file, like options in XML file.
They changed the option?
I don't know.
So this is what I originally had it set to. It's all spaced out properly. Ignore this at the bottom.
Sure.
Then when I do the fix,
They got scrunched up.
and it's actually overlapping the text right there.
Okay. Well, I'll try it out with my app too and see whether it's the issue can be reproduced. Right. So what I'll do now is I'm going to try a kind of more complicated project with kind of more complicated screen layout. So let me go back to my projects, and this time we'll try the DVD diary card. And we'll once again build it. But this time I will apply the screen patch so that it can display in high resolution, on a higher resolution screen. Okay. And we'll get to that folder and get ready for that. It's under APK tool. So I have a little script here that does everything for me. The last step may not work because if I have an app already installed but using a different key, I first have to uninstall it first. So let me go and install that first. Go to Settings, Applications, and then just click on the app that I want to uninstall. Go ahead and uninstall it first. Then we can try to do all the patches. So update DVD diary card.
It took me a while to do this in Windows, one command.
But once you get the command working, it's really nice.
Got one there.
Yep. So I even have the upload part, automated too. So. Yep, it's kind of handy that way. Alright, so now the app is uploaded and with the screen patch too. So let me find it first. DBT diary card. That. Yep. Okay. Okay, I know the app probably has its own problem because I think this one was not the release version, and wrong number of arguments for GetValue. The argument data is the wrong number. Okay, so that's my own problem because I think this app is not this is not the final version of the app. But anyway, when I look at the screen, it looks okay to me. I mean, it's stacking up all the items correctly, but I never specify the actual number of pixels. Whereas you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It appears to be literally taking that many and not doing a relative pixel.
So you have to change either the font size or something else to make it fit your screen.
Yeah, some way I'm gonna have to determine
Okay.
the density and compensate for that.
Yeah, but with this particular app, everything is kind of stacked up correctly. But I never used the actual number of pixels for height specification.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that you might want to do, is to see if you can actually just let it do it. All right, so exit. Are there any questions about using App Inventor 2 now that it's in beta stage? It has some changes, but I think there are a few other changes too. When we go to the blocks editor, this is kind of interesting because let me switch to the main screen here. Okay, there are quite a few changes when you go to the components and select things that maybe not this one. Let me try. Slider, that's a good one. Remember before, it has all the set combined into one single block that you drag and put into the main screen area, and then you have to use the drop down box to select which method of slider one do you want to use to set a particular property to something else. Now it is going back to the App Inventor 1 method by enumerating all the things that you can set. Now, if you drag a block like this, you can actually still change it after you drag it by clicking on the drop-down button. You can still do exactly the same thing as before. But I think it does make the selection screen kind of more cluttered. But I guess people have been asking for this feature to come back because they're used to this and don't want to use the new way of doing things. They just want to select it from here instead of selecting the block and then choose which property to set or get. The other thing you also noticed, I mentioned this one already, is you can just drag and drop the thumb position. You can just select it right away and put it into here, which is a nice feature. I mean this way you don't have to go all the way to variables to get to it, or type in on the screen to get to it. So there are it's a time saver, but not really making that much of a difference. Any other questions about App Inventor 2? Now it is in beta stage. Yep.
I did almost notice that the warnings are sort of false. That it shows like 8 warnings right now.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, if I look through mine, there's nothing there until I reload the project. I close it. I go to a different web page altogether, come back, and it resets to 0.
So there are still things that it has to address. Okay, now I'm looking for my GetValue procedure and see whether it's can tell me what is going on with that. Maybe I'll just do collapse all blocks.
And that doesn't seem to work properly to sort by category. I can be stuff completely out of a category and just lines them up like you just did a vertical alignment or
Yeah, but the GetValue procedure should be in purple, right? All procedures are in purple.
yeah.
And I'm not seeing it.
Get
And in-browser searching probably doesn't work. Okay, it's the GetValue of TinyDB that's failing, I think. Oh, okay. This is the other thing. I bet you it has to do with that, because GetValue requires 3 values now instead of 2. That's what is complaining. Okay, so this is one big change that everybody should notice, especially when you use TinyDB. Okay, when I go to TinyDB1, you see the quote-unquote usual stuff, but it's not that it's not the same anymore, because in GetValue now you can specify the tag of what you're trying to get, but it also automatically has a value if tag not there. In other words, it has a quote-unquote default indicator of, okay, what should I return when your TinyDB database does not have the item that I'm looking for. Whereas before, I think it returns false, right? It returns something that can be interpreted as false, and now it's returning, whatever value that you specify there. Apparently, if they use the word value, it means, it can be of any value. It can be a boolean like true, false, and not necessarily a text. Now, if I drag a block like this now, it automatically has, this third field in it. But when I have my database, I do not, and I use GetValue before without the third field. Now the third field is going to be empty, or it's going to do something funky about it. Okay, so now I have to find out, where I'm,
Yeah, can you
using GetValue first. Sorry?
can you show?
Yeah, I have to find out, which one is calling that first.
Maybe initialize.
Well, I didn't do a single thing, so I think the initialize one is going to at least trigger something that will use it.
About to get
Initialize new item, new entry.
or initialize value.
Yep, so that one is the first one. So I have to track down to initialize new entry. Expand the block. Yep, this one's kind of big.
It's right there. Get value.
Right here. Yep. So you can see that socket is empty. So let me rearrange the blocks a little bit. I'm always kind of afraid to rearrange things because sometimes it's hard to track it down. So now it's complaining. I think this is why the program crashed. Is because value, if tag not there, is empty. The socket is not connected to anything. But if it's crashing at runtime, it really should be an error and not just a warning. So right now it displays a warning, and it says you should fill all of the sockets with blocks. But it's not. It really should not be a warning if it can crash the program. Okay, so I'm gonna change it here, and let's see. We'll just change it to false. Okay, go to logic. Just change it to false. And download the program again. So there are certain things that might break your program because the new API is different. It requires one more socket to make it work. How many people are using App Inventor 2 with your project? Okay, so you guys need to try it out. If it doesn't work, let me know, so we can find out why it's not working. Most of the time, I don't think it's going to be a problem that cannot be fixed. It's just a matter of finding out why it is not working with the new version, and then do something to fix it and make it work. Still complaining. The arguments is the wrong number of arguments for value.
Same problem.
This is, huh?
Same problem.
Is it at the same place? I don't know whether it's at the same place.
Not the same place, but the same problem.
Right. But I have to find out where that text appears. That's the problem. That's the difficult part, is to find out exactly where is it. And it doesn't give me a list, doesn't pinpoint the errors. Okay, maybe I should do this. Expand all blocks.
Give it a moment.
Yeah, give it a moment. Now we can arrange sorted by category. And now we
And zoom out of the web page and just look for a little yellow triangle. There's
Okay.
one.
Well, this one is just, hanging out, in the middle of nowhere, which should not interfere with anything. Fine. We'll get rid of all of these, as we've encountered them.
There's one.
Oh, there's another one here. Yep, another tiny DB1 issue, same thing. And this is the one that was causing problems. I know because it's the timestamp. When we saw the runtime error, it was displaying the timestamp, and which is the tag. So we have to specify a value not found here. So we just say false again. Okay. And now you can see my warning is down to 7.
There was something there.
Yep. Okay, initialize local. Okay, this one is probably okay because it's okay. We can try your method, see if the single quote works. Double quote. Yep. Well, okay. It took the first one as a clue, and then the second one as the actual content.
Yeah, you do a double quote and any text after that, and then it closes that in the text block.
So I don't need a closed double quote.
No.
Yep.
You
So a
just
single
need to
double
start it.
quote is an indicator that whatever follows is text.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now I'm down to 6 warnings. This is the one thing that about this is that is kind of it can use some improvement is to at least give me an idea of where the errors are located. Okay. Click. So need something. Yeah, if I just use single quote and then press the enter key, it doesn't accept it. It needs to have something in it. Alright. And then we have a whole bunch of this stuff here. It's just initializing things to nothing. But this one is important because this is the one that is going to cause problems. So this one does require, to have false in it. Down to 4. This one is just a block floating in outer space, not a problem.
You've already checked the right side of the workspace.
I did.
Yeah. You haven't completely checked the left side though.
When it reports a warning, it doesn't tell me where it's generated. It doesn't give me a stack like this call, this call, this call, this, and now we are having a problem. It just says, nope, we are having a problem here.
Is that good?
Yeah, I think it's worth give it another try. I think Google Chrome can use a new feature. I think Google can integrate their image search feature into Chrome itself. Do you guys know what is an image search feature? No? You can actually do an image search, and it's really kind of cool and creepy at the same time.
What, reverse image search?
Yeah. You can look for pictures with similar, things, basically. So if I tell it, I'm looking for that little yellow triangle, that can be helpful. Okay. Place. Reload. I'm doing this, because you probably may need to do the same thing. Depending on what features you use in your program, you may need to do exactly the same thing. So you just have to kind of go through your source code, and do it in a way that is iterative. All right, at least you can get to this part. I felt good. All right, and to log. review. All right. Well, as far as this app is concerned, most of the exercised code is now working. So that's kind of something that you might need to do. If you're already using App Inventor 2, you have to kind of do this as well. All right. Okay, here's the next question. Is it unreasonable to expect that you might need to do something like this, with an application development platform? Like they upgrade the development platform and it's causing some backward compatibility issues. Would it be reasonable to assume that sometimes you might need to do something like that, or is it unreasonable and say, well, by the time they publish a development platform, it should be stable and nothing should change, or nothing should be backward incompatible? What do you guys think?
Reasonable.
It's reasonable, especially when it is alpha. Okay, so anything that is in alpha or even beta is especially in alpha, because the difference between alpha version and beta version is in alpha version nothing is stable. Okay, they're not guaranteeing any type of backward compatibility or any type of stability. Beta is different because most software in beta stage will guarantee at least backward compatibility. In other words, we're just fixing bugs now. Okay, we are not adding new features. We are not going to cause any backward incompatibility. We're only going to fix things that we promised you will work this way, but it doesn't work the way that we promise. Okay, that's the difference between alpha version and beta version. How would you fix the problem that we just encountered? If this is already in beta version and somebody wanted to say, well, but I want that call to do something differently. Let me just point out what I'm talking about. It's in TinyDB1 in the GetValue call here. Okay. In other words, GetValue. Okay, so let's say in the beta version, they only have a tag here without the second field. And somebody says, but I really want to have a default value returned when I cannot find the value that I'm looking for in TinyDB. How would you address that problem, making both camps happy, basically? I have a solution. The solution is to keep GetValue only using a single tag and behave exactly the same way as before, but add a new block called GetValue with some kind of indicator that the value cannot be found. So you have a new block that is not the same as the old one that will implement what people want, but people who have already used GetValue won't get the problem that I'm getting. But I cannot complain because I was using it when the software was still in alpha stage, and everything in alpha stage can be changed. I mean, it's just there's just no guarantee that things would not get modified when they're in alpha stage. So that's how I would solve the problem as a developer. Yep.
When you have like a 100 application.
Yes. Yep. So when you're developing commercial software, you do not use alpha or beta software. Okay, that's just not what you do when you're in a class setting like this. We are using this because we are only dealing with smaller programs, and this way there's no syntax barrier. You don't have to learn the syntax of Java in this case. Syntax presents a whole different level of kind of complexity because now you have to deal with the syntax. A syntax error is not the end of the world. Okay, if you miss a semicolon, the compiler will tell you. Okay, there's something wrong with the program, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. If you group close curly braces incorrectly, now that is a little bit different. Okay, especially when the indentation is incorrect, it does not indicate the actual nesting of the statements, and you have a curly brace that is not at the wrong place. Those bugs are much more difficult to find until you change the program so the indentations indicate the actual nesting level. So in the next class, in cisp362, we'll definitely talk about how to deal with programs that are actually written in text as opposed to drag and drop like this. Tristan also found something new about TinyDB. It is the first one is clear all, and the second one is clear tag, which is really cool because I've been waiting for something like this. Because in my DBT diary card application, I want to have the ability and say, okay, everything is now done. It has been reviewed by a therapist or whatever, and I can start the diary, from scratch again. But I don't have the feature, to do it just yet in the alpha version of App Inventor 2. It doesn't have the ability to clear anything. Okay, you can make a tag empty. In other words, if you want to clear, quote unquote, clear a tag, what you can do is to store a value and store nothing to that tag. But that tag still exists. Yeah, it's just empty. Go ahead, sorry.
I do this.
In App Inventor 1, that's how you quote unquote clear.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's still there in the database. It's just empty. But now with clear all and clear tag, one will clear every single tag that you have in the TinyDB, and the other one will clear a single tag, which is really helpful because now I can actually incorporate this into my app and say, okay, it's time to clear out the entire diary and start from scratch. Get tags is also kind of interesting because it's giving you a whole list of every single tag. This feature was also missing in the previous version or the alpha version of App Inventor 2. To me, this is extremely helpful because this is a diary app, right? And right now, I only have a very crude way of navigating. Go back one day, go forward one day. I have no idea when the previous entry is. Okay, so I have to keep pressing the previous entry, or have a programmatic feature to go back day by day to find out where is my previous entry. With this particular feature, I can now just say get all the tags, then I can display all the dates.
So this is a list?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it returns a list. It doesn't say that, but I would definitely assume it's returning a list. Get all the tags in the data store, which is really helpful because now I can just put all of those tags into a list. Okay, well, it's already in a list to begin with, and then I can associate that with a list picker interface. Then I can quite easily and say, okay, let's go to that particular date and time and retrieve that item. Okay, whereas right now I have to scan, I have to use backward and forward to scan for items. So this is definitely a new, really cool feature to use. Are there any questions about all of these changes? But I think these are all good changes, except for the one where it broke my program. But that's okay. Kind of expected. It didn't break my program any further, so I'm just not. I'm not complaining. Yep.
How could you clear TinyDB in 1.0?
In 1.0,
Yeah.
you cannot do it from inside the program. You have to go to applications, in the Android setup screen, and then I'll show you exactly how to do it. So what you do is you go to the menu. Okay, stop and exit. You go to settings. You go to apps, or at least this is how I would do it. You go to the app. You click on the app itself. Do not uninstall the app. Okay, there's no need to uninstall it. All you have to do is to say clear data. So that will clear everything that this app has stored, including the TinyDB. Is that okay?
Another question. If you put something in TinyDB
Mm-hmm.
and then you don't use that app again for a year, it's still going to be there?
It should, unless you do a data wipe or something.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, if you don't do anything to the device itself, it will still be there. Yep. Okay, are there any questions about this part? No questions? There are definitely other changes too. They've also moved items. When you go to the designer view, they move items around in the palette. You can see under user interface, there are a few new items. That one is completely new, which is the web viewer. I think some of you will find it useful for your project because when I went when I review your revised version of your project description, quite a few people I think can actually make use of the web viewer feature. Let me just bring up the help text here. Okay, so there you go. Yep.
I think it was there before, but it was not ready for prime time or whatever. It was at the very bottom of the.
Of not ready for prime time.
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
Is
Maybe I
web
do.
viewer and web the same thing?
No.
No.
No, web viewer. Okay, let's take a look at the description here. Where is it? Web viewer. There we go. Component for viewing web pages. The home URL can be specified in the designer or the blocks editor. The view can be set to follow links when they are tapped, and users can fill in web forms. Warning, this is not a full browser. For example, pressing the phone's hardware back key will exit the app rather than move back in the browser history. So it's not a full browser, but it is a component inside your app that can render a particular URL, a web page. Yep.
Yeah, it was definitely there previously.
It was. Okay.
It was just not in that list.
Okay. So now it's moved out of not for prime time, so it's probably stabilized and ready for it to be used.
User interface.
Hmm?
It's in user interface now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is what we are seeing now is in App Inventor 2 beta. So that can be quite useful for those of you who want to display, like you can go to a weather website. If you know exactly how to format the URL to request the weather for a particular zip code and for this particular time frame, or for just forecast of a certain thing like temperature, wind, or whatever, you can now display just that portion as a component inside your app, so you don't have to go out of your app to go to the browser. So definitely a nice feature. Other things are also moved around a little bit. Notifier used to be in others, but now it is in user interface. Even though it is not a visible component, it is still mostly used for user interaction, and that's why I think they moved notifier from others, up to user interface. Under layout, nothing got changed. I think they're still exactly the same thing as before. Under media, we have a few new entries, like sound recorder. Used to be not ready for prime time, and now it is in media, so that's nice to have. Text to speech has always been there, but I personally have not used it. You guys can play with it and see how well it works.
I think it's dependent on your device.
Dependent on device. Okay. Let's see. This part I don't think has any changes. Ball, canvas, and image sprite, they are still the same as before. Each one may have a new feature or new methods. I do not know yet. I haven't played with that yet. Under sensors, I think they're still the same. I think all of these were present. I think near field may be new.
It's new.
It's new, right?
Yeah, it's new in App Inventor 2, though it was one of the features that weren't ready yet, but were available.
Okay, so it was not. It was in not ready for prime time.
Yeah, whatever that category was.
Right. Okay. Near field is for your near field communication protocol on your phone. That's what you use. To pay for stuff. At a store. Under social, I think these have always been there. I don't think there are any new items here. Under storage, we have the usual stuff. I think these have always been there too. Fusion tables control, I think, was under not ready for prime time, and you can see that they don't have a not ready for prime time category anymore.
Tiny DB web, or Tiny Web DB.
Tiny Web DB was there already, but it was under not ready for prime time, I think. And this one can be interesting because it has a similar feel to just your usual TinyDB, except this one is for communicating over the web, so your storage is actually done offline. And this link is going to a forward for creating a custom Tiny Web DB surface is going to nowhere. Yep.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of links broken after the update.
I think it's just a URL issue. If you look at a URL here.
Yeah, because I think it's structured differently for the previous App Inventor 2 alpha.
Actually, but if we read the rest of this, we may get a feel of how to get it to work. Methods, store value, web service error. Now I'm kind of slightly interested because I want to find out how to get this to work. WebDB. Okay, so the key is how do we get the service URL to work? How do we sign up for a URL that works with this? I think that part probably has not changed. It's probably the same way as before. Under connectivity, we have the same thing. This part has not changed at all. We still have activity starter, Bluetooth client, and Bluetooth server, and also the web. And Lego Mindstorms, as far as I can tell, is exactly the same as before. They have not changed that part either. So we get one or two completely new feature, and then they completely deleted the not for prime time category and moved all of those items into the other categories. But each item can still be different. I mean, I have not really investigated and find out how much changes they have made with each component. Okay. Any questions? No questions. Okay. I know Chris, would like to see the web view component because that's actually one of the things that his app needs to do. No questions. Okay, now I do have a question. Okay, App Inventor, or the apps that you write with App Inventor to, does not have the ability to stay in the quote-unquote background and run in the background. Okay, it can only run in the foreground, and that's a problem because sometimes you want something to run in the background, or sometimes you want your app to become active at a certain time. So if your app is not running in the background and it cannot quote-unquote wake itself up, what are you going to do? Say again? The timer doesn't work because if your app is not running, if you switch to something else, your app is not going to keep running. Yep.
Can you edit the
XML file
and add a permission? Or
I have not looked into that approach.
That not fully resolve the issue?
We can.
Manifest.
I can do one quick search, but I'll present another solution first, and then we'll try the way you suggested. There's one app, and I cannot remember the name of the app because it's really useful. Let me just find the name of the app first. It's called Tasker. Okay, there we go. So for those of you who want to be able to run something at a certain time, there is a certain app called Tasker. It's an Android app. Okay, this is Tasker. I did pay for this particular app. It's one of the very few apps where it's well worth the $3 in this case. We'll just kind of go over the description here. Total animation from settings to SMS ADC2. You can trigger something by app, time, day, location, a lot of different things. You can have a lot of actions, and the actions can be starting a particular app. So that means you can link your App Inventor written app to Tasker, so you can have Tasker to basically bring your app up at a certain time. Okay. Create your own standard app to share or sell. I'm not quite sure about that part. Because I think Tasker is not really as user friendly as App Inventor when it comes to that kind of interface. But this is definitely something that you can look into. If you want a certain app to run at a certain time, or using some other triggers, this is something that you can definitely look into. I use Tasker for one little thing, right now, which is to turn my phone into silence mode, so I can set up on certain days of a week at a certain time. I can specify, okay, silence the phone. But the trigger mechanism is actually far more complicated than just based on time and date. It's definitely quite useful. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so let's look into your solution and see how we can turn an app to run in the background.
I just remember seeing a permission for that, though I don't know if App Inventor exposes the necessary stuff to utilize it properly or at all.
Okay. Okay, that's a background image, which is not what we are looking for. So I'm going to say mine is image. It's a permission. Maybe not. Okay, gray background. Or maybe I'm looking at the wrong keyword. There we go. How to run activity in background in Android. Okay, it's called a surface, that's it. Which are basically UI, user interface less activities. Yeah, so you should use surface to achieve this. They can run in background till explicitly closed. Intent surface is another alternative. I don't think we can use Surface because I think those are specially built type of apps.
It was just a thought.
That we may not be able to use. Surface is an application. Okay, it's the same thing here. Next semester we'll definitely be able to do it because once we use Java, and then we can specify the type of app that we are writing, we'll definitely be able to do stuff like that. But right now with App Inventor 2, we are lacking the ability to do something like that. All right. Are there any questions? I mean, when you guys are writing your app, are you guys running into any type of problems, technical problems or otherwise? Like, how do I get this done, or how do I get something else done?
Is there such a thing as scroll bars?
Scroll bar? What is the intent of the scroll bar?
The image is too large for the emulator.
The image is too large. Now the image is always scaled. Okay, so are you talking about an image like in App Inventor? Are you talking about this kind of image?
Okay.
What is the context of the image?
You have a picture, I don't know, President Clinton. You want to show it in the emulator, but the screen isn't big enough for the whole picture.
Okay.
You had a picture there with scroll bars, and you can move it around. Can you do that?
That's an interesting question. I don't think there's a built-in feature to do it.
Is the image in a canvas?
What?
How's the image in the program itself? Is it in a canvas or is it?
I don't have it. I'm just asking a theoretical question.
Oh, okay.
But that's kind of vague because it depends a lot on whether the image is by itself, or whether it's inside the canvas, or whether it's inside the web view. Okay, if it's inside the web view, maybe it is scrollable within the web view itself. Let's give it a try since you asked a question, and some people may have a similar question. So we'll go ahead and integrate a web view into this particular app here. Okay, this is my closed screen tester app, but I can just kind of hack it to also include this. Okay, so here's my web viewer, and I can just force a particular home URL and display the app and see whether it works or not. Okay. Width is automatic, height is automatic, so we just have to find a large picture. Do you want to find a picture of Bill Clinton?
No, it's anything out of Sacramento Bee or whatever.
Just look for a wallpaper.
Yeah, That's a good idea. Wallpaper. And the images.
There you go.
That should do it. Okay, so here's the full URL. Copy and paste it here. Make sure it starts with HTTP. Prompt for permission. User's location. Visible. Okay, so that's all good. Let's build it. And we can test it. I think this will present a scroll bar because the screen cannot display the full resolution, but it's not going to be scaled because it's not an image itself.
Since it's a touch device, will it display a scroll bar, or will it just give you the ability to
Swipe it.
swipe it around?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll find out. And this one I'm going to use the regular install.
And there's a scroll bar.
Yeah, that's just the native
Yep.
scroll bar, though. I
Yep.
don't see the bottom one.
No, because it's it's at the bottom here. Now you can see
Oh.
the bar.
Yes, but if you have that on your device, the scroll bar is so thin, how can you manipulate
It's not a scroll bar. I mean, you cannot really drag it. See, it's not something that you can actually drag.
Oh, go to the very top of the page so you can still see the button up top.
Mm-hmm.
Now, move the picture around. Okay. Yeah, because the scroll bar actually went over the element, the button space.
So the vertical scroll bar is for the entire screen. In other words, the height of the viewer object component is actually as tall as it needs to be. If you want a separate scroll bar just for the the web viewer component itself, you can do that by forcing the vertical resolution or the vertical height here in pixels. So if I force that to be, let's say, 400 pixels, then it's going to be different because now the web viewer component has its fixed height, so it will display differently.
Also, if you change the screen to non-scrollable, that should also take care of that.
I don't know how it's going to address that. Is it going to add a scroll bar because it's limiting the size of the component?
Well,
Or
since
would it
it's
just cut
automatic,
it off?
it would probably be automatic to what the available real estate.
I'll try this approach first and then see what happens. Is anyone planning to use the web viewer component in your project? Nobody? Maybe?
Possibly.
All right. Okay. All right, so let's test it.
So it's able to display HTML.
Yep. Yep. You just specify the URL, and it will go there and render the HTML document inside a component that you specify. Yep. So now you have a scroll bar just for the component itself. It's not really a scroll bar. It's more like an indicator of where you are, and you can also see that there's a zoom button here. In other words, we weren't. Okay, it's just getting fuzzier.
I can see the pixels.
Yeah. Yep. So there you go. I think it's still a useful feature.
What happens when you move the mouse over where the scroll bar should be? No, it just displays it.
Yep. It's just displaying it. It's not dragging it and using it for control. Yep. So does that answer your question?
On the device, would you do that dragging with your finger?
On the device, you can drag it with one finger.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's only when you use an Apple that you use two fingers to scroll. Yep. Okay. Any other question?
I have a question.
Yep.
How can you load a picture landscape? I think I would put it in Paint and then rotate it and then load it in that way.
Okay. Are
What
you
I mean is
rotating
to have
the?
a longer view if you load in a landscape.
Okay.
rather than
Do you need to rotate the picture itself?
Yeah, rotate it 9 degrees.
I don't think there's a way to do it.
Well, the way to do it, you put it in a graphics program, turn it 90 degrees
Yeah.
in the natural source.
If it's inside the
Already turn 90
canvas, you can
degrees.
do it. If it's
What other
inside
way?
the canvas, sorry.
That's one other way. Since you can't rotate 90 degrees in the emulator.
In the emulator, you can rotate the device itself, but the image is not rotated.
Yeah,
See,
the thing is, I want to order the device so I have a widescreen view,
okay,
of it.
then you can rotate the device.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I want to load it in so that I could look at it
The
with
image
this
is
orientation, landscape orientation.
You mean like this?
yeah, the image is locked to the
Orientation.
orientation, so you don't have to turn the image yourself.
See, the picture is still, in the right orientation. I just rotated the device. And by default, your application is sensitive to the orientation sensor, so it would change its orientation correctly.
I don't get it. Here's the picture, right?
Yeah.
Well, can we go back to the port orientation? Okay, how do you do that?
I just rotated the device. Control F11 and Control F12.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Maybe he's wondering.
Control F11 or Control F12.
Yeah, I think one goes forward and the other one goes backward, but since I only have two orientations, it doesn't matter.
How do you do Control F11, Control F12 when you have the device right in your hand? There are
Then
no
you
F buttons
then you
on
actually
it.
rotate the device.
Yes.
You
You
rotate
just-
the device.
You rotate the device. The orientance
See this? There.
Okay, all right.
Okay. You can also lock it too. I mean, on an actual device, you can, or even in the emulator, you can probably just lock it to a certain orientation. But this way, it's easier. Okay. Any other questions? No other
I
questions?
have a question.
Yes.
When I try to switch from screen 1 to screen 2, the emulator says you can't switch screens during development. That's the error message I get.
Download the APK and use the APK for debugging because you cannot use AI Companion for that purpose.
But you did one time in class. I
Yeah.
asked you from how to get back from screen 1 to screen 2 screen. You said press the back button.
Yeah.
But how did you get from 1 to 2 in class when we did that demonstration that day?
I just did it today.
You what?
I just did it today. In fact, that's the purpose of this very same app that we were looking at. You press the button, it goes to the second screen. I press the back button, it goes back to the first screen. And then the first screen says, screen 2 says right back at you. That's what we just looked at earlier today.
I couldn't press the button to go to screen 2 at all because the error message in the emulator said you
Okay.
cannot move from one screen to another during
Okay.
development.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Just listen. Use the build feature to download the APK file and then use ADB to upload the APK file. You cannot use App Inventor Companion for this purpose. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it will close the screen, but it'll just regenerate the
Right.
screen you're going to.
Yeah, so what you do is you use, build in App Inventor 2. Are you using App Inventor 1 or 2?
What?
In App Inventor 1, you don't even have an option. You have to use the download feature to download the app locally and then use ADB to upload it to your emulator. That's the only way to debug a multi-screen application in App Inventor 1. In App Inventor 2, they kind of give you that feature of the companion can actually switch screen to, but it's not going to be helpful for development purposes. This is still the best way to do it, is to download the app and then upload it to the emulator.
Then what happens to the user when he actually has the device?
The user will do it the same way as what I did. You're basically running the software the same way as your end user will be running it, which is the best way of debugging the software, because it's not going to run any differently from what an end user would see.
Yeah, the end user won't be using the App Inventor companion. They'll be using whatever they download, the APK that they download.
Yes, but he still will be pressing buttons to go back to navigate.
You have two issues. The first issue is your development method. The development method has to be using the build feature in App Inventor 2 and then download it into your computer. App Inventor 1 has a similar concept. Okay, let me see if I can find out how to do it in App Inventor 1. I haven't used it for a long time. Okay, so in App Inventor 1, some of these projects may not work. Okay, let's see. My projects. Oh, it keeps track of its own projects. Cool. Okay, in App Inventor 1, so instead of using you basically have to do a package for phone, and then download it to this computer, and then upload it to the App Inventor. Upload it to the Android virtual device or the emulator, and then debug it that way. So, okay, let me just do it.
You can't just program a button to do this.
Program a button where? On the app itself,
Yeah,
or
on
in somewhere?
On the viewer.
On the viewer?
Drag a button to the viewer, press that button, it'll give you another screen. Can't do that in 1.0.
1.0 is zombie. It's not getting fixed or enhanced anymore, so nobody's going to add any button to it to do anything. So this is the only way to do it. I mean, it's not undoable. It is just you have to use a different way of developing your program. Now, okay, let me just do this all in App Inventor 1, just in case anyone using App Inventor 1 wants to do something similar to this. Okay, let me go back to my projects, start a new one, just call it new screen. Okay, so here we have a button, and I have to add a new screen to it too. So add screen 2, fine. Okay, so switch back to screen 1 first, and open the blocks editor, and open it. Iced tea versus hot Java, I guess. Everything that is in Debian has ice, like ice stuff, ice weasel. Okay, so now you go to My Blocks, go to button 1. When you're clicking, go to built-in, go to control, go all the way down to the bottom, and say open another screen with start value, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to type in a screen name. And it has to be the same as the other screen, the name of the other screen, which is screen 2 here. Okay? Are you getting all that stuff? Okay. Now you go to screen 2. Okay, go back to the web interface here. Now you go to screen 2, and then switch back to the blocks editor, which will automatically switch to the blocks of screen 2. Go to my blocks, go to screen 2, and then you select when back pressed in screen 2. Then you go to built-in, go to control, then you go to close, not close application, close screen. Okay, let's see. Close screen with plain text, or just close screen, either way works. Because I just want to show you that it will close. Go back to the first screen, that's all I'm going to show. So now we can say, go back to the browser here, package for phone, go to download to this computer. And it will give you an APK file to download to your PC. I think that's it. There we go. So you save it to a file, okay, to your computer. You switch to the ADB command here, and then you just upload that APK file to your emulator. It's out of date. Okay, switch to the emulator and go to its menu. And now we should have that new screen app here. Okay, it's running. Click the button, it switches to screen 2. Press the back button, it switches back to the first screen. Mission accomplished. The key is to not use the companion, software running on your Android device. That does not work. For App Inventor 1, it does not work at all. For App Inventor 2, it does not work. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. I take it that all of you are working on your app project. Is anyone running into any particular problems that it's kind of difficult to solve?
Design.
Just the design.
It's part of a larger project, so I'm trying to find the best work for this one.
I see.
Yeah, I'm working on the larger thing with other people, so there's a corner of it that I'm kind of prototyping this class.
I see. So is your struggle more with kind of limiting what to display in one single screen and how to partition the screens?
It's more just limiting how to keep the scope as small as possible and contained as possible for what I need to do in this class, and still make it something that I can then use later.
I see.
So it's not just completely like a visual prototype and completely trash.
I see.
But, yeah, it depends on some routes we want to go with the rest of the project and how I want to proceed with this one.
I see. So you're trying to avoid the feature creep.
Yeah.
Yep. That happens a lot, especially with this kind of applications. All right. Well, I'm gonna end the lecture on time today. It is 10:20, which is the end of the lecture. So in about 10 minutes, I will start the lab time. If you have any specific question about your application, I will be able to answer those questions at that point. All right. I'm gonna stop the recording now.